Good evening, everybody. Good evening, racquetball friends and family, and welcome to Game 5 of Real Racquetball. I'm Sudsy, here with Executive Director Mike Wedel from USA Racquetball. And we're going to continue, the same format that we've been doing. We're going to be taking your questions. It's been successful. We've been happy with it. It's a direct connection to all of you. But, this week before we get started, it's important that we do take a moment of silence here to recognize two of our family members, two, great racquetball players, friends and family and supporters. We lost Chris Poucher and Ty Kelly way too early. So before we get started, let's take a moment of silence and then we'll get right to the show. Thank you for that, everyone. Chris was a huge supporter. Ty was, just a diehard and loved it. And Mike, I know, you want to say something about Chris, as he has and was a USAR board member. So go ahead.
Yeah, Chris was on the board when I was first elected onto the board years ago, and he was I'd never met him before that. Very welcoming. Was a neat guy to spend time talking about racquetball. And then I've met him many times after that. Huge supporter of the game and volunteered a lot of time, a lot of money, and was just a good guy to have around in racquetball. So he will be missed by many. And I've got to say that I unfortunately never had a chance to meet Ty or spend any time with him, but everything I heard was really good, that he was a passionate guy about racquetball. So like you said, with two guys gone too soon that were good for our sport.
Yeah, no matter how you slice it, it definitely, Ellie and I talked about it last night, and Ty was very close and influential, actually, in John Ellis's life. And early on, he told some stories, and Ellie got a little emotional about it. And, I had a pleasure of meeting and knowing them both, very limited. But, again, two racquetball people that love our sport. They're part of our family. They're part of the community, and they will be missed, but, not forgotten, but definitely too soon. So, all right, Mike, we're gonna start here with Game 5 of Real Racquetball. Now, usually Game 5, Game 5 for me was the tiebreaker and it was over, but we're not even close to over. And, we do have a little schedule change, which I will remind everybody at the end of the show, but we're going to have Game 6 next Monday. Usually it's every 2 Mondays or every other Monday, but we're actually going to go Game 6 next Monday, a little schedule change. So this week, we're going to stick with the questions. All right. We're going to stick with the format of attacking you, Mike Wedel, with questions that came directly from members. And, that was part of what Real Racquetball is supposed to be. And this first question, which is interesting to me because I get to pick these questions. And, I was scrolling through my Facebook today and I saw Suzanne Bollinger from Arizona talk about a situation with LA Fitness down there. And the first question comes from Carolyn Vasquez. She says, why is it so hard to work with LA Fitness to help bring the sport to everyone? Or better yet, serve as a partner with USAR to help the existing players?
Great question. There's a lot of people before I took this position about a year and a half ago that have worked hard to work with LA Fitness. And I've not had the opportunity yet to meet with them personally, but I will. And we're working with a couple different groups to strategize how exactly we can do that and try and get the most results out of it. Because they're a big player in racquetball. They own a lot of courts across the country, so they're obviously somebody we need to work closely with. I'm working with U.S. Handball. They use the same court, so we've got a common goal in working together. So we're putting together some efforts. They have some connections with LA Fitness folks, so we think we'll be able to get to the right people fairly quick and very easily. So I've been meeting with them for about 6 weeks now, and I think we've got a pretty good plan. So over the next few weeks, we'll be reaching out to LA Fitness to see if we can't sit down and put together some kind of a plan to go forward. It's a privately owned company, so we've got to keep in mind that working with them, we'll do absolutely the best we can. And I feel we've got a terrific product. They've already got the courts in their clubs. How do we just help them fill those courts up? And we're gonna attack it with both racquetball and handball, see if we can't double up on their use. And for me, I just want them to keep the courts. I mean, they can play whatever sport they want on it as long as they're available for us to play racquetball on. So we're working on it. It's not going unnoticed. I get that. I get questions about LA Fitness quite a bit. And I know that many of my predecessors have worked hard to try and get meetings and get movement on getting programming into their clubs. A lot of it depends on the manager in the club. So we're gonna try a little bit of a different approach, partner up with handball and see if we can't get some motion in that arena. So
Mike, that's something that we've seen for many years. I mean, when LA Fitness came onto the scene, it was something that a lot of us said, wow, they're buying up all these mom and pops, which a lot of mom and pops didn't like. Maybe they liked the immediate bank account, but they were giving in. They were kind of selling the soul and not saying they did the right thing or wrong thing, but a lot of us did recognize that as, wow, we're giving a lot of power and putting a lot of our future into the hands of a privately owned company. And I remember when they came out, their cookie cutter model was very simple. They were going to have 4 or 5 courts in every single club. And they made these promises and they talked about these things. So a lot of us were like, rah, rah, LA Fitness. In fact, many members across the country couldn't wait to join LA Fitness. I, for one, loved going. And then all of a sudden the business model changed and they started looking at, what are we doing with that 800 square feet and how are we putting people in there? And, you said something which strikes a chord with me. Number one, I would be relentless to do whatever I could to get to the right person. If I had started a club manager, fine, I'll start as a club manager, but that's not where I'm going. I'm going straight to Irvine. I'm going to California. I'm whining and dining whoever I have to. I'm going to befriend them. If they want to play golf, let's play golf. If you want to sit and read a book together, I'm going to do whatever it takes. And I think that's a focus that we definitely need to have. And I know you're working on it, and I know it's not easy. A lot of our members, and you see this on social media every day, they are posting about these things and they're talking about it. And if USA Racquetball can't do it alone, so it is important that you, the member, you, the player, also make light of this and show these local managers how important racquetball is. And then, Mike, the last thing, and I do want to hear your comment on that, is I do think that one of the things I would present to LA Fitness when I was ready is, here's how we're going to help you fill the court, right? So if I'm Mr. LA Fitness and I look at 800 square feet and I see it's empty, or especially in these COVID times where this is a perfect excuse for me to take some equipment and bikes and put it in there because the courts aren't being used. Do we have any plans or any ideas on how to help LA Fitness, basically fill those courts?
Right. We do. And we've got a couple of things we're working on. It's kind of why it like I say, it's not gone unnoticed. I know there's a lot of people talking about it on Facebook and all of the social media, and have been for years. This has been kind of going this direction for a long time. So we need to have a really well-prepared plan when we go talk to them. We can't just go in the door and tell them we want you to keep your courts open if there's nobody on them. We need to have a plan. So we have, through R2 and other systems, we've got league systems. Working with Connor, we're going to look at setting up national leagues, something we run from the USA Racquetball office, but so they don't have to have a programmer in their club to run leagues. We can do it remotely, but yet they still make money off the thing. So we've got a lot of things we're working on. We want to go to them with a package, just exactly like what you said. We can't just go in and say, we want you, we want you, we want you. If it doesn't make money sense, they have no motivation to do it. They don't owe us anything. So we're in the plan to set up leagues for them, run all of these things. Whether they're programmers or not, we want to assist them if they're there. If they're not there, how can we help them with programming for leagues? And if we do racquetball and handball both, we can keep their clubs busy every night of the week. If there are not enough leagues to keep racquetball on it every night, well, how about handball and racquetball? And if there's other things we can put on it, how do we put together a package that we can keep their courts busy 5-6 nights a week? So we're looking at a lot of different things. It's a hugely critical aspect of what we're trying to do. We're reaching out to a lot of the independent clubs and a lot of the other clubs across the country, but LA Fitness controls so many courts that they need to be the ones we talk to first.
Yeah, there's no doubt. They're the biggest. One of my plans when I was consulting with Lifetime Fitness was I actually was going to personally go to every single club and say, okay, what is your biggest revenue stream in your club? So for instance, at the time, let's say it was CrossFit, or I think they called it Alpha or whatever. I wanted to personally go and meet whoever was running that department and say, I'm not trying to steal any of your players. This is all I, or your fitness members. This is what I want to do. I want to come in and talk to them for 3 minutes and just introduce them to racquetball and tell them the benefits as to why they should just give it a shot. Because if there's 30 of them in there in front of me and 3 of them play, that's great. All right. So yeah, I mean, there's ways to do it, but it's not easy. And I know you're working at it, which brings me to the second question here on Game 5. All right. This one comes from Steve Cucci. And he says, is USAR communicating with the gym chains during this pandemic, encouraging them to allow for single player practice at a minimum and asking these gyms to accommodate their racquetball players safely? That comes from Steve.
Yes and no. There's so much about COVID. It's so determined or dependent on where you're at. Cities, counties, states, they're all different. So I personally spoke with 30 different clubs, managers, owners, different aspects over the last 3-4 months, giving them information. We've got some documents on our website, things to consider that helps them set their club up so it's safe for racquetball players to play. Depending on how restrictive those clubs are, the rules are in those areas, they can apply more or less of those things to consider. So I've sent that out easily 30 times to different clubs and organizations. We're any one of them that we can reach out to. If you've got one particular that you think your club that needs some help, needs some information, you can either direct them to the website, send them to myself, Connor, Renee, any of us in the staff. We want to talk to those clubs, but there are hundreds of them across the country. So we can't really just call each one of them. We've sent probably 100+ emails out to different clubs, ones that members have let us know that this club's struggling with information they can't open. As you know, Dan Whitley runs all the clubs in St. Louis, the VETA clubs. So he's deep into the logistics of operating a safe racquetball program. So a lot of the information we have, he and I talk on a regular basis. So we have a lot of information we're sharing with other clubs across the country. It's certainly something we're working on every day. We're getting calls from different cities, different states, asking what criteria, what they can consider, how do they get their clubs open, and it's just, I don't know. The most frustrating part about all the COVID stuff is there's no consistency in it. Different parts of the country
that's one of the most frustrating parts.
Yeah, it is. It's incredibly frustrating. You can go to Georgia, Atlanta, and they're running tournaments, have been for a couple months now.
Well, to your point, first off, there is an Atlanta IRT tier. I believe it's a 4 this weekend in Georgia.
Yeah.
And I recently was just in Florida, as you know, for 2 weeks. And for 2 weeks, I was going in and out of the local club, and there were no restrictions. Masks were pretty much optional. So there's just a lot of gray areas, and I think there's going to be a lot of personal choices and personal decisions. But I do have a question. Mike, are any clubs, whether they're mom and pops, I would imagine that the big corporate ones like Lifetime, LA Fitness, they're not reaching out to us. But are any of the mom and pops reaching out to USA Racquetball to, ask if there are any kind of COVID restrictions or the way to go about playing with COVID? Or is it really just every man for himself at this point?
Well, we have to direct them towards their local government, their health departments, in whatever city, county, state they're in, because we've got to be careful. We can't give bad advice to a club that they can play racquetball as long as their people are wearing masks. Well, that local city may not allow that, and we don't want them getting in trouble. So we give them the best advice we have, and then the best thing they can do is contact their local health department, cities and county, find out what the regulations are. The regulations that are written are vague enough that sometimes it's up to the club to interpret what that means. Here in Kansas City is a great example. The club I play at, just a couple of weeks ago, they started allowing you to play without a mask on. The LA Fitness and other clubs around it have never required masks while you're doing it. And in questioning the club management, they said this is our interpretation. The way the rule reads, we can't allow this. So it, even within, I mean, these two clubs are probably 5 miles apart, and they've interpreted the rules completely different. So we give them the best advice we can, but we've got to be cautious. We can't overstep our bounds because we don't make any of the rules. We're interpreting what we believe to be a national things that can help them interpret the rule the best way for us.
Well, I'm confident that they would interpret the rule in our favor if we could introduce them and say, hey, we have 100 players coming into your courts to play racquetball. I'm pretty sure they'll find ways to get around those rules or restrictions. But yeah, I mean, it's definitely a flowing situation. It's something that's going to play itself out. Hopefully with time, it's going to be out of here. You know, we talk about it all the time. I, for one, just believe that a 2021 calendar is more realistic. And when that 2021 calendar starts, who knows? But, you know, we got a lot of work to do. All right, let's get to question number 3 here.
You made a great point that I think is really important in that the local players need to stay together. They need to be vocal and not, I mean, don't be obnoxious about it, but let the club know that, you know, what the rules are at other clubs. That's kind of how I believe we got the rule changed at the club that I play at, was most of the players were going over to this other club to play. So just, I mean, be respectful about the rules because they're assuming a lot of liability, but let them know that there are X number of you. I mean, there's strength in numbers. Tell them, look, we really want to play. Understand the restrictions they've got, but let them know that you're active and you're not going away. You want to go play.
Do you know, is there a blanket rule right now for COVID, say in Lifetime and LA Fitness versus the privately owned clubs?
Nope. Depends on, it's different everywhere.
Okay, so all depends.
Yeah.
Okay. All right. Yeah, like I said, I was at a privately owned facility in Florida, and it was just fantastic. You know, it was like almost normal in a way. You know, we walked in with or without a mask. I mean, there was hand sanitizer, but we used one ball. We weren't switching balls, and you know, I was training with some of the Colombian players, and I'll tell you, we all felt great just being on the court, you know, and smacking the ball around. So it was really nice. And I was tested again negative. So, all right, let's get to the next question from Roddy Hogg. He says, we're gonna get away from the clubs now. The USAR, which was once the AARA, once printed copies of Racquetball magazine and sold advertisements as a source of revenue. The magazine is still offered virtually, but viewership has fallen dramatically. As a result, ad revenues are down. Even Mr. Pillow, My Pillow, has recently flashed less commitment. What is the USAR doing to replace the important revenue stream?
The magazine's a great topic. We could talk about it quite a bit. It's one of those.
I loved it.
It's a love-hate thing. I subscribe to my local newspaper. I sit and read that newspaper every week. It's a weekly paper. I love sitting reading newspapers and magazines. I'm not good at sitting at a computer and reading a magazine online. There are a lot of people that are. We get a lot of feedback about how valuable the magazine is virtual. But up until just recently, we've printed copies of the magazine, and it's a subscription. It's $15 a year, and we print, I don't know, a couple thousand copies of it and mail it out to everybody that subscribes to the magazine. So it's still being, or was still being printed. Now we've stopped printing it because of COVID. There's just not the cost. It costs us about $7,000 per issue to put together and print.
Say that again. $7,000 per issue?
Per issue. And we do 4 per year. So it costs about just under $30,000 a year on a budget line item to print the magazine. That includes putting it all together, printing it, mailing it out. It's about $7,000 an issue. We generate between $3,000 and $4,000 per issue in advertising, depending on what time of the year it is. So it's a losing proposition for USA Racquetball. And you know, I know the rebuttal of that is we'll go sell more advertising. Well, we're going to hire somebody to sell marketing and advertising. It's hard to sell print magazine advertising. We're never going to sell enough to make it worth somebody's time or salary. So it's an investment for USA Racquetball. I love the historical value of the magazines. If you go to our website, Jim Easterling scanned in all of the old magazines. You can go in and read magazines from, I don't know, way back, 80s, 90s, somewhere. I'm not sure exactly when he started scanning them, but he's done a phenomenal job of scanning all those magazines in. So they're all digitized. But right now, we're just doing the monthly newsletter. I look forward to getting back to printing the magazine again. I love at the club we're at. It's great because we set 3 or 4 magazines out on a table, and when the players were sitting around waiting to play, they'd all pick up the magazine and thumb through it.
But Mike, at the end of the day, it's not cost effective, is what you're saying. It just doesn't work. But to his point, obviously the ad or the revenue stream isn't there because people aren't advertising in the magazine. So maybe how can we do that, right? How can we get them to advertise? Because I remember the magazine. I remember there was a time where we got it monthly, or it was or at least 6 times. I mean, that was a long time ago, but it was awesome, and as a kid, and yeah, definitely times have changed. Most things are digital, but the racquetball community might really appreciate having that magazine. What about, have we ever thought about doing a smaller version? 7,000 is a lot.
It is. And we actually, when I first took this role, even when I got on the board, my goal was, because I knew that we weren't mailing the magazine out to membership anymore. And I thought, well, that's crazy. It's a wonderful mode of communication that we should be sending out to every member we have. So I looked into costs on it. And if we were to mail a magazine out in printing and postage, that $7,000 per issue goes up to about $22,000 per issue if we mail them out. Well, it's just not effective. You can't do that. So I don't know.
Yeah, let's hear from the members. I would love to hear. Sorry, Mike. I would love to hear from the members. What they think about the magazine. Maybe we can run a poll. Maybe we can do some sort of a questionnaire in the digital magazine. Because as much as digital is nowadays too, let's be honest. I know we send out a newsletter. I don't know how many people. I know you have the analytics of the click-through and this and that, but I'll bet you if we gave a quiz or a test, they would not be able to answer a lot of those questions.
Right.
And that's just coming from me. I skim through it, and yet I want to know what's going on. So I do like that paper in hand. But hey, all right, let's jump. Let me just show everybody what I'm looking at. This is my phone here, and these are the questions that I have here from you, from all the members and players. So if you see me looking down, this one just popped up, and I'm going to read it, and it's from Anonymous. Okay. Sorry, Mike. I'm gonna throw one at you here.
Okay.
We all know, this is me speaking. We all know that our calendar and events are uncertain, right? And we just don't know exactly what's going to happen. Yep. So here's a question from Anonymous. Have you considered combining singles and doubles next year? Maybe hosting a large tournament next summer? Talk to me.
We have more than considered it. It's been a big topic of discussion. We meet on a very regular basis, at least once, if not twice a week. Connor, myself, Renee's been involved in a lot of them. We have a committee of events committee trying to get ideas. And the hardest part about it is really twofold. There's 2 real big issues right now. One is, can we hold the event? When? When is COVID going to allow us to hold an event? We've reached out to a lot of different clubs. Most of them are really hesitant to commit to an event that size. It's inside. When you put that many people into a building, think about national doubles. You put 300-400 people in that building. The universities are all going to cringe. They're not going to allow it to do that. So we're speaking with a lot of them. So we've got all kinds of scenarios. Connor's working on a lot of different budgets. And what if we do singles and doubles together? If we combine juniors and singles, doubles is a terrific standalone tournament. So we're looking at all of them. And our goal is to have some kind of a schedule out in October. It won't be a schedule in concrete just because we don't know what January is going to do. What's December going to look like compared to now? We just got done with a conversation about clubs not wanting people to play racquetball. Well, imagine going in and telling them we're going to bring 300 people from across the country and scatter them around your club for 4 days. They'll freak out on it.
Well, that's a good point. I feel your pain, and you said something that's super important. Obviously the Anonymous, and by the way, I don't know who Anonymous is, or maybe I do, but I would accept. I'll even take responsibility because I think that's a great idea, whoever Anonymous is. So I'll say, let's say that was my question, but it really isn't. So what's the likelihood of like a university or a college allowing 3, 4, 500 racquetball players in to have an event? I mean, Connor, I know, is working behind the scenes and he's communicating with them. But is that even a realistic possibility at this point? National doubles is scheduled in February.
Right.
And, none of us really see anything on the calendar from now until at least January, maybe February. What's the likelihood of that happening?
Yeah, well, and that's the first part of it. If the university, if they did allow us to do it, to hold the event in February, the second part of the problem is how many people are going to get on a plane and go do that? So if we set up, let's just, for argument's sake, say we set national doubles up in February, the university says yes, the hotels will take us in. How many people that typically go are going to get on a plane and go play racquetball for 4 days in February? That's our big risk. Well, because if we put the tournament together, we've got money invested in it. We cannot afford to go lose $10,000 because only 75 people sign up for the tournament. I mean, we need 200, 300 people. Yeah. So that's where the tough decision comes in.
Well, listen, I'm getting some private messages here, and Stuart brings up a good point behind the scenes, who does a great job, by the way. Thank you, Stuart, facilitating this all the time. He says that a lot of communities are up in arms, or they're complaining about students being back on campus. But, imagine 300 racquetball players. And then Connor follows right up, which is great. And we'll have Connor on at some point. He says the likelihood is actually high. Right. The bigger risk is what you just said, which is people just not going. And then the other thing is, and then Connor, I'm just looking at a private side chat, everybody. So it says that, he says the universities need the event revenue that sports or events like ours bring in. And yeah, that's great. But then here's another issue that we have with this COVID. It's probably split right down the middle of who's going to go, who's not, whether there's a vaccine, whether there's not, and yeah, I agree with you, Mike. We just can't afford, and I don't know our numbers. I know they're public and open and people can see them, but we just can't afford an event that has, 50% participation or 30% participation. It just wouldn't work. But with that said, I think that your big obstacle, USA Racquetball and your team, you guys need to come up with a plan and say, okay, you know what? We're going to do this. We're going to schedule this out this far, and we are going to put that in concrete. Now, if something happens between now and then, because I think as players and members, we need, especially as a professional player or a US team member, we need something to look at and plan for and budget for, right? Yeah. How many people are going to be liquid to go to these events after losing so much money, with this past 6 months, 7 months? And that's a big concern.
Big concern. Another really good concern is that if we have to assume the responsibility of making sure everybody's safe. So we know what we can do to put things in place at the club to keep everybody safe. But if you put 200 people into ASU Stadium, they're in close proximity. How much responsibility do we have to make sure that we're not putting them at risk? So there's a lot of parts to this. This is really a complex, the question is complex in a lot of ways. And like I said, we're planning to put out a schedule in October, the best we can put out. And we're considering all the options, both locations, dates, combining, all of those things are being discussed. They're all on the table because what we've got huge financial responsibilities. We've got to make sure we don't lose money on these events. We absolutely need to get events happening. We need tournaments, and that's what drives membership, gets people off the couch and back in a court.
There's no doubt about it. And one of my consulting ideas was, I said that we shouldn't have any major events until the entire world is open.
Yeah.
And then from there, you're going to need at least 8 weeks, especially on the pro tour, right? So speaking professionally, and a lot of the players, in USA Racquetball play professionally, or they play in those IRT or LPRT events. It just doesn't work if you tell me today, hey, we're having a tournament in 3 weeks, and I'm like, Mike, I haven't had a racquetball court.
Yeah.
What are you talking about? So there's a lot of things you have to take into consideration. All right, but we're going to move on from that, and we're going to, I believe we call this overtime or extra time here, because we are getting to the clock here. So this one comes from Tony Antone, overtime. Thank you, Stuart. All right, Tony Antone says, when I traveled to Colombia, I met the president of the IRF. He spoke about the glory days of racquetball in the 80s. He says, I believe that he was from Paraguay. He's actually from Argentina. And he says, there was one question that he wanted to know that really stuck with me, and I would love a good answer. And Tony asks, and Mike, I'm going to help you with this one. He said, who killed racquetball in the United States? So I'm going to go first.
There you
So
go.
Tony, that's a good question. And I've been in the sport for, my wife might be watching, so don't tell her, but almost 40 years. As a player, as a club owner, as a consultant, as an advisor. And, there is no one individual that killed racquetball in the United States. What happened was, in my opinion, and then Mike, please jump on this, we did so well and we were kicking butt in the 70s and 80s, and the rest of the world, and now that I live outside the U.S., they caught on to racquetball. So they're a little early in their stages of the sport. And as racquetball continued, all these other options started coming around. Inline skating, if you remember Nautilus, rock climbing, all these things which gave these kids and juniors and parents more options. My parents, with Jason Menino's parents, owned 2-3 big health clubs in New York City, very successful. One had 20 courts at the time in the 80s. It's where Ruben Gonzalez came from, Jason Menino, myself. Marty Hogan's been there to do, exhibitions. And just so much has changed. There hasn't been one person that killed it. Now, fast forward a little bit, I can tell you this, and this I know from personal experience too. When a lot of these big corporate companies came in and took over, they just didn't have that same passion for racquetball. They were looking at the space as, how do we just make money, period. And what they didn't realize, and Mike, I'm not sure, I remember this stat came from IHRSA, the International Health and Racket Sports Association. Is that correct?
Yep.
I remember hearing this years ago, so I don't know how true this is. But when a member walks into a club or into a health club facility to sign up for the first time, the January 1, I'm going to go get in shape, and here I come, I'm going to do fitness and everything. The average lifespan of that membership is 6 months. Now, this may have changed, recently. I'm not sure.
Yeah.
When somebody walks into a club and says, I'm a racquetball player, I want to play racquetball in your courts, that average lifespan at the time was like 3 to 4 years, which I know is way more now because there's just less options available. This goes to, nobody individually killed it. We just need to have better programming and educate these club owners and a lot of these corporate companies. How do we direct and how do we put people in those courts? Right. And, my wife read that question, who killed racquetball? And it was like, there's not one individual that came in and said, we're going to kill it. Mike, what are your thoughts on that?
I think you're right on point with all of that. But I believe racquetball, much like many things that happen in our country, it's cyclical. And it had its heyday. It was phenomenal. People were building, the YMCA in Houston, had 20 some courts. That's just not heard of anymore. But I really believe that it's swung that way. And as long as we can protect enough courts to keep a core group, it will swing back because it's so popular international now that there are opportunities coming to us in the next few years that will bring that back and not only secure the courts we have, but I believe there's going to be a strong investment in courts because what you just said, the club that I was at is absolutely right. And fitness members will move because weights are the same, classes are the same. You can find your cheapest place to go. You can get a fitness membership for $10 now. Okay. Courts are a whole different story though. So the court players, if you got a group of people, they're never leaving. Just give them a good court, throw a ball out there and turn the air conditioner on. You got members forever. You can charge them twice as much money.
That's correct. That we're lifelong members. And I say that all the time. And going back to these other, niche type fitness things like a CrossFit right now, you can't do that when you're 60, 70, 80. You can do racquetball and you will do it. We have, what's the oldest USAR member right now? I think he's in the 90s, right?
Yeah.
So, that's phenomenal. And those are things that we need to educate people with. And those are some of the things that I would personally go up to you, Mike, if you weren't a racquetball player and say, hey, I know you love this sport, or I know you're doing this, blah, 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 but here's what racquetball can do to help. So, anyway, it's definitely going to be, I think I'm good.
Yep. Well, there you go. Yeah, perfect. Can't hear you. Okay. Well, while Sudsy's working on his, he's got mute on or something. We can't hear him, but he'll get that worked out. Still can't hear you. Nope. So while he's doing that, the point. There you go. Now I hear you.
Back now.
Yep.
Happens. This is what happens when you go live television. Royster always told me that. So somebody. It's funny. People are talking about how Elvis messed up racquetball. Imagine if that didn't happen to Elvis, and we had him as a celebrity, promoting our sport and continuing, and maybe passing it on to the next generation of entertainers, and because fame helps. Let's be honest. But Mike, we're coming to the end of the show.
Yep.
We like to keep this time frame here. It works out well for everybody. I want to talk a little bit about Game 6. So Game 6 will be next Monday. Don't forget, everybody. We're not going to do it. We usually do Real Racquetball every other. This one is going to be next Monday. We're going to move away from this format. We're always open to your questions. We will always address them. You can continue to send them to us. You can send them to me anonymously. You can send them directly to Mike or Connor or Shane or Renee, whoever you want. Did I say Shane? I meant Stuart. Sorry about that. And, we always want to hear from you. That's what Real Racquetball is about. But next week, we're going to take a totally different path, and we're going to start talking about ways to give back to you. And you being the people and individuals in racquetball that are out there and doing good for us or trying to do. People that maybe aren't high on the radar or maybe off the radar a little bit, but we know are making an impact and truly doing what they can to help our sport. And Mike, if you want to say anything about that before we go.
I'm really excited. I think this is going to be a neat program. It's something we've been talking about for a little while, and we want to find a way that we can honor those people that are stepping out and doing something for the sport. They've identified what their challenges are, how they can grow the sport in their area, and they're devoting the time and the resources to do it. So we want to find those people across the country and recognize them, and it's that grassroots work like that is what will bring racquetball back. So we're gonna work on that, and we'll talk about a lot more in the next show.
All right, everybody. So thank you for joining us once again on this fine Monday evening. Don't forget, we will see you with Game 6 next Monday, September 21st. So please join us. Pay attention, stay safe, be smart, talk to your club owners, your club managers, get in the court, or just get a racquetball racket and a racquetball in your hand, and let's play some racquetball. We will see you soon. Thanks for joining us. Have a great night.
Everybody have a good evening.